Picture this. It's winter in 1539, and King Henry VIII of England is limping through his grand palace, his leg ulcer bandaged and leaking, his once handsome face now swollen and pale. He's 50 years old, bloated, lonely and paranoid. His kingdom is uneasy. His enemies are watching, and, once again, he's looking for a wife. The great Henry VIII, the man who broke from the Catholic Church, dissolved monasteries and executed 2 of his previous wives, is about to marry again. But this time, it won't end in romance, passion, or even death. It'll end in the most humiliating failure of his life. And a rumor so cruel, it still echoes through history, that the new queen smelled like dead fish. Yeah, that's an actual historical claim. So how did a royal marriage turn into one of the most embarrassing scandals in English history? By the end of 1539, Henry was in a tough spot. His third wife, Jane Seymour, had died giving birth to his only legitimate son, Edward. The king had the heir he wanted, but his grief and his ego demanded another wife. The question was, who on earth would be brave or foolish enough to marry him? England was politically isolated. Henry had split from Rome, excommunicated himself from the Pope, and made powerful Catholic enemies across Europe. His advisor, Thomas Cromwell, the same man who'd helped him get rid of Anne Boleyn, had a plan. He wanted to form an alliance with the Protestant German states to protect England against a possible Catholic invasion from France or Spain. And how do you seal an alliance in the 16th century? Easy, you marry someone. Enter Anne of Cleves, a 24-year-old noblewoman from a small German duchy near the Rhine. She wasn't famous, she wasn't powerful, but she was Protestant and politically useful. Perfect. Cromwell sold the idea hard. He told the king she was virtuous, well-mannered, and pretty. To prove it, Henry sent his favourite painter, Hans Holbein the Younger, to paint her portrait. Holbein had done this before, and let's be honest, the guy knew how to flatter his subjects. When the portrait arrived in England, Henry was smitten. The painting showed a serene young woman with delicate hands, pale skin and gentle eyes. "She is fair," Henry said. "I will have her." But here's the thing. Portraits don't show personality or scent. Set sail for England in December 1539, crossing the icy North Sea to meet her future husband. She probably had no idea what she was walking into. A kingdom run by one of the most dangerous men in Europe. Henry, of course, couldn't wait. In true royal drama fashion, he decided to surprise his bride-to-be. He disguised himself as a humble messenger and stormed into her chambers at Rochester Castle, expecting the classic fairy tale moment, the king in disguise revealing his true identity to a swooning bride. But Anne of Cleves didn't get the memo. Raised in a quiet, religious court, she wasn't used to this kind of theatrical nonsense. When a sweaty stranger barged in and tried to kiss her, she pushed him away. She was polite but confused, maybe even uncomfortable. And Henry? Oh, his ego shattered on the spot. He stormed out, red-faced, muttering to Cromwell, "She is nothing so fair as she hath been reported. I like her not." That was the polite version. In private, he raged that she was ugly, dull, and that he could never do that which is required of a husband. Still, politics came first. The marriage contract was signed, and on January 6, 1540, Henry married Anne of Cleves, while quietly planning how to get rid of her. Now this next part is where things get weird. After the wedding, Henry went to bed with his new wife. The next morning, his servants asked how things went, and the king looked them dead in the eye and said, "I liked her before not well, but now I like her much worse." Translation: it didn't happen. He claimed he couldn't perform. He said Anne was so different in body from what she appeared in person, that her breasts were saggy, her body smelled bad, and yes, that she reeked as though of dead fish. A pretty harsh thing to say about your brand new wife, right? But here's where things get interesting. There's zero actual evidence that Anne had any kind of odor problem. None. Not from servants, courtiers, or ambassadors. In fact, the reports describe her as polite, healthy, and well-kept. So what gives? The most likely answer: Henry was lying, or at least projecting, because here's the not-so-romantic truth about Henry VIII at this point. He was a physical wreck. He was obese, nearly 400 pounds. He had a massive infected leg ulcer that constantly oozed pus and smelled foul. His breath was reportedly terrible. He was aging, in pain, and probably impotent. The once athletic king who jousted and hunted now had to be lifted onto his horse with a mechanical device. So when he failed in bed, he blamed Anne. Because, well, that's what powerful men did in the 1500s, and poor Anne had no clue what she'd done wrong. She'd been taught to be modest, quiet, obedient. She didn't flirt, she didn't flatter, she didn't play the seductive court games Henry liked. She was confused. And honestly, who wouldn't be? Meanwhile, Thomas Cromwell, the man who arranged this marriage, could feel the axe hovering over his own neck. By June 1540, just 6 months later, the marriage was annulled. The official reason? Henry claimed it had never been consummated. Anne agreed, probably because she had no choice. But here's where she pulled the ultimate Tudor power move. Instead of fighting it, Anne smiled, signed the papers and accepted the title the king's sister. In exchange, Henry gave her a massive settlement, several palaces, a big income, fine clothes, and enough jewels to make any noblewoman jealous. And just like that, Anne of Cleves went from unwanted queen to one of the richest, safest women in England. While Henry rushed to marry his young mistress, Catherine Howard, Anne enjoyed her new freedom. She had money, independence, and, most importantly, she still had her head. Catherine Howard, on the other hand? Yeah, not so lucky. Within 2 years, she'd been executed for adultery. So let's just say Anne's quiet compliance aged better. After the annulment, Anne stayed close to the royal family. She got along well with Henry's children, especially Princess Mary and Princess Elizabeth. The king even invited her to court for special occasions. At banquets, she sat near him. They joked. They danced. He called her my good sister. Which makes you wonder, did he ever regret it? Because Anne played it brilliantly. She never remarried. She never made demands. She learned English, adopted English fashion, and managed to remain on good terms with one of the most unpredictable kings in history. Even after Henry's death in 1547, she kept her estates and her dignity. She attended the coronation of his daughter, Mary I, and later, Elizabeth I. She outlived Henry by a decade, and when she died in 1557, at age 41, she was buried in Westminster Abbey, the only one of Henry's 6 wives to receive that honour. Pause for a second and think about this. History remembers Anne of Cleves as the ugly wife, the one who smelled bad, the one Henry couldn't touch. But when you look closer, that story falls apart. Every physical description of her from people who actually met her says she was average, maybe plain, but certainly not grotesque. What really happened was simple. Henry couldn't perform, his ego couldn't handle it, and he blamed her. And because he was the king, his insult became legend. Smelled like dead fish. Flanders mare. Centuries later, those words still stick, not because they were true, but because history loves a cruel joke more than a quiet truth. But here's the irony. Anne of Cleves was the only one who truly won. Catherine of Aragon died in exile. Anne Boleyn was beheaded. Jane Seymour died in childbirth. Catherine Howard was executed. Catherine Parr died after childbirth. And Anne? She got rich, lived peacefully, and outlived them all. Maybe she wasn't Henry's idea of beauty. But she was the only one smart enough to play the game and walk away alive. So the next time someone mentions Henry VIII's wives, remember this. Behind the jokes, the portraits, and the myths lies a woman who survived the most dangerous husband in history. Not with rebellion, not with seduction, but with silence, grace, and timing. Anne of Cleves didn't just escape Henry's wrath. She turned his rejection into freedom. And in a world that chewed up queens and spat them out, that might be the greatest revenge of all. Thanks for watching. What do you think? Was Anne of Cleves a victim of Henry's vanity or the smartest woman he ever married? Let us know in the comments below and tell us where in the world you're watching from. And if you love weird, hidden stories from history, make sure to like, subscribe, and stick around, because sometimes the most shocking tales are the ones everyone forgot to question.